Hello and welcome to another episode of the SCP podcast. My name is Patti Weiter. I'm the marketing chair for SCP, and I am joined today by my friend and colleague, Dr. Mira Brancu of Towerscope. Welcome. Thank you for being here with me.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we do the SCP podcast is to build community for SCP members to get to know each other, but also to learn a little bit more about some of the great things our members are doing and share some of the expertise that we have in different areas just to uplift, our professional development and connection to each other. So I want to start out and share with other people who might not know you as well. And also I might, learn some more about your professional journey to consulting psychology. A lot of us have this long and winding road that we are on. So tell me a little bit about your professional journey and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, so it has been a windy road for sure. And it's it started with me first being a school counselor. That was my first career. And I did that for 5 years at the elementary school level and then high school level. And I probably did it for all the wrong reasons. A few of the right reasons. Some of the right reasons were that I knew I was good with kids and I was good with people in general and listening and had sort of raw counseling skills as a good
Mhm.
listener. That's what people said. I was, a
Mhm.
good listener, help people get along. And so that's the first thing I thought of. And it was a master's degree. I wasn't ready to get a PhD.
Yeah.
And so I thought what master's degree, and that's kind of what I leaned into based on the feedback that I got about what my skills and abilities were. Along the way, what I realized was it wasn't quite right for me. Just because I had summers off and came home at 3 p.m. did not make it a good profession for me.
So
um,
you were kind of using your strengths, but not quite really feeling it was the best fit.
yeah, yeah. And even back then, there were some glimmers of what I should or could be doing that I wasn't paying close enough attention to. But for example, I was really interested in developing programming that affected, a wide range of people while also liking the one-on-one stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also wanted to improve the system in some way. So when there was something that wasn't working well, this was like a good or and bad thing, but there was a time that I sent a message to the leader of my organization where I said, "Oh, I read this thing that, about ethics, and I feel like we're doing something unethical." And I just wrote this really long email about it. And would love to help you improve and blah, 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 which was crazy for somebody this early in my career to be speaking to somebody at that high level about this kind of stuff and without any knowledge of the background of what it took to make that kind of
Yeah.
decision, right? I was not at the decision-making tables. And so the glimmer of me being interested in improving systems was there, but not the right mechanism and not,
Mhm.
and so I got this feedback at that time from my direct supervisor that I made a major political faux pas
Yeah.
by doing that.
The
And
audacity of you to email a person
the
about ethics.
audacity.
Yeah.
Um, and I was also really interested in diversity, equity, inclusion stuff without realizing that I had an interest in that area.
Mhm.
Um, and this came to be because of the fact that I am an immigrant myself to this country, and I remember her saying, "Listen, I fixed it for you. I basically just told the leader that." English is a second language for you, and you probably didn't really know what you were saying, and you miss some things every once in a while.
Yeah.
And
So
that
you're
was really,
written off.
it was written off. I was really hurt, and I
Mhm.
decided clearly I'm clueless. I'll
Mhm.
never be invited to the decision
Mhm.
making tables. I'm not cut out for large hierarchical bureaucratic systems. Um, and so I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do next, but what I do know is that being a school counselor pegs me in to the point where I can't do anything else. I'm trapped
Mhm.
in this profession.
Mhm.
I tried to get a license. I did get a license, but I didn't feel capable of just opening up a practice with that kind of skill set. So I decided to go back to school to be a clinical psychologist.
Mhm.
That was my next degree. And because I felt like it could give me lots of opportunity to change my career many times. If I didn't like therapy, I could do assessment. If I didn't like assessment, I could do administration. I could do research. I could do lots of things.
Mhm.
And sure enough, I did every single one of those things because I have
Yeah.
lots of interests. And so I um, ended up working for what is arguably one of the largest, most hierarchical bureaucratic systems in the US,
Yeah. Yeah.
Department of Veterans Affairs,
Mhm.
which I told myself I wouldn't do, but here I was. And I
Yeah.
told
So,
myself it
so
would be
that
like,
thing that you were maybe intimidated by at some point because it burned you
right?
now seems like a challenge that you're willing
Well,
to
they were
maybe.
willing to take me in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, and this really did change the trajectory of where I went with my career. Number one, I ended up supporting a research study. I did not want to necessarily be a researcher, but I did end up supporting a research study. I enjoyed that. But guess what I was doing most of the time? Like outside of when I was doing assessments for this study. I was like, let's create an SOP, a standard operating procedure for how this study goes because, we're not communicating well with each other and things are falling off. I really want to get all of the people to get along and this team to work better together. How can I do that? Like there was all of these sort of like things that were drawing me into what I didn't realize was organizational development and team development. And
Mhm.
eventually I wanted to also develop myself as a leader. Um, and so I got a lot of opportunities to do that. I got a stretch assignment where I could do that. I was eventually promoted into higher and higher leadership roles because of the fact that I was interested in these things. I
Mhm.
didn't have my own research agenda. My agenda was how can we all function at the highest level and how can I support my organization in making sure that everyone works well together, in making sure that we have streamlined systems, strong operations. Um, and I had no idea that this was an actual thing
Yeah.
that
Isn't
people
that,
did,
yeah,
like,
I think so many consulting psychologists find
right,
themselves consulting and then they realize what they're doing. But
right.
you were already assessing a system, looking, for process improvement opportunities, trying to navigate organizational politics and all of those. Like you were naturally drawn to some of these things
Yeah.
before realizing what consulting psychology was.
That's right. That's right. There was a moment in time when I started realizing a little bit. I was 3 years into my role. I got a stretch assignment to serve as an interim director of another research center. And they assigned to me um, these two psychologists who came from the National Center for Organizational Development within the VA. And
Mhm.
they provided me with consultation for how to be a better leader in this situation. And I thought, I am like
Yeah.
liking this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So that's how I started doing more of that for my own organization. When I came back from that stretch assignment, I started doing more of that for the Office of Mental Health across the system, trying to sort of help streamline, help improve efficiencies and
Mhm.
effectiveness, that kind of thing, communication flow and processes, blah, blah, blah. Um, 5 years ago, I started really like wondering, um, you know, what else is next? What's next? I was going down a very wonderful leadership career track.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I wasn't necessarily convinced that was the right
Mhm.
track. And I also wasn't convinced, honestly, that um, research would continue to be funded in the same way that it was.
Mhm.
I was wrong, but I thought to myself, like, I shouldn't put all my eggs in one basket because I was not in a
Mhm.
permanent position. That
Mhm.
position could always be cut at any point. So that's when I started thinking, what's my backup plan if this doesn't work out for me,
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and that's when I discovered Division 13,
Yeah.
Society for Consulting Psychologists. I went to their conference in 2018, 5 years ago.
Mhm.
I was listening to them and I'm like, oh my God, these are my people.
Yeah. That sense you get, you're like, this community is what I've been looking for. These people are welcoming. They are, talking my language of all of the things I'm interested in. That's what this is. That's what consulting psychology is.
Right.
So there was just sort of like a sense of, this is the space that I should be working in.
Yes, yes. And I think it also came right around the time that I was also benefiting from my own leadership development and a leadership coach.
Mhm.
Um, and so it all just sort of came together. And she had planted the seed. She's like, Mira, with your scores on these assessments, have you ever thought about being an executive coach yourself? And I
Mhm.
didn't know what that was.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know what that is. What is that?
Yeah.
And so I learned about that at SCP, like what consulting psychologists do. One of those things
Mhm.
is being an executive coach,
Mhm.
right? Another could be leaning into team development. Another could be organizational development at higher levels,
Mhm.
broad systems, impact. Um, and all of those things really interested me. So it was a confluence of like experiences and comments and like feedback that I was getting about my abilities that got me to that point. Um, and that's how I ended up starting a company, Towerscope. Back then it
Mhm.
was Brancu and Associates, but I've
Mhm.
rebranded to, not be so narcissistic to just slap my name on it.
Well, I know a little bit about your brand, and it seems like your rebranding was really defining exactly what it is that you do really
That's
well.
right.
So
Yeah.
rather than having a name based on your name, it's defining exactly where you want to make a difference.
That's right. Yeah. So Bronco and Associates was my way of saying, like, I don't just function alone. I like to
Mhm.
work with people. I'm a collaborative team kind of person.
Mhm.
But Tower Scope was really like um, the message about what I actually focus on.
Mhm.
The name comes from this memory that I have when I was coming from Romania to the US, and we stopped in Italy and we went to the top of St. Peter's Basilica.
Mm.
And that was the first time as a 6-year-old I ever had like this experience like, oh my God, there's an entire world
Mhm.
beyond my small sort of what's in front of me. And then the
Mhm.
same sort of experience when you go to New York, which is where we landed, where I grew up. You go to the top of these skyscrapers and there's these tower scopes, that's what they're called.
Mhm.
And they let you zoom in to any place in the city and then zoom out and get a big picture. And the entire point of what I do is help leaders sort of zoom into very specific, perspective and focus in on what they want to do and they're prioritizing and that kind of thing, but also
Mhm.
take perspective. Like, what's the big picture here? Let's
Mhm.
come out of the weeds for a second. What do I want to, what's my scope? What's of my,
Yeah.
scope of influence and making an impact? Where do I want to go next? Where do I want to make an impact? And let's now zoom back into that area
Mhm.
and get there. So that's kind of where all of that came from.
Yeah, and that's such an important process because so many people have this sort of inclination maybe more towards the details and being in the weeds, or more, big picture, but missing some of the things that maybe others are trying to point out to them. But what you're doing is helping them to navigate between those two perspectives in a way that is strategic and um, helps to scale the impact, I think, of whatever it is that they're trying to do. So I really think your rebranding, while it went away from your name, was really authentic.
Thanks.
And I love the story behind it as well, which I was not aware of. I knew what a tower scope was, but I did not hear the entire story. And I feel like those stories, whether it be about like career journey, the branding of what it is that you do in your practice, they all, give us a better sense of getting to know you, which I think is one of the qualities within SCP that most people will say that they value is that sense of community. What do you think it was going to that first conference that drew you in? Was there someone you met or some experience or, talk that you heard? What was it that let you know, like, oh, okay, this is where I need to be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of people I met and talks. I mean, if I can remember correctly, I met John Fenig and Bill Berman. I went to the talk with Rob Fazio and Greg Pennington, where they talked about breaking into consulting, which still goes on today.
Yeah.
I met, I'm pretty sure during that meeting, I met Lubna Sumji and Rehman Abdul Rahman, and went to the DE&I talk, and I loved it. And yeah, I mean, so many others,
Yeah.
and each one of those was like very different perspective on what you could do. And how you can start as a consulting psychologist, that helped me like connect to real people, but also connect to like the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are a person who's very dynamic, who's done a lot of different things on your journey, and being able to see that this isn't boxing you in. Consulting psychology is not going to be that that aspect of psychology that says, well, this is all you do now, is this one particular thing. Yeah. So just a little plug, we are having a conference in February in Austin. If anyone would like to join us there and have this wonderful welcoming experience,
come join us
and meet us. So tell me, you have rebranded Towerscope. What is it that you're working on right now that you are very excited about?
Yeah. So from the very beginning, Towerscope was developed as a social impact entrepreneurship, a firm focused on making sure that, some portion, 20% of the profits and or my time and our efforts went into supporting underserved and underrepresented women in leadership. This is kind of where my passion lies, in supporting them. And especially within industries that are, and especially now have been even more disrupted and underfunded, under-resourced when it comes to supporting any leader, really. That's within like education, within healthcare, and a few other kind of STEM industries where we need, great leaders, and especially women leaders more than ever. And so I've leaned into that from the very beginning. It's baked into the firm itself. But in addition, this year I'm really excited because it's really the next iteration, the next step in trying to scale that out to more people beyond me. And it's the Towerscope Leadership Academy. It's been sort of in the works in my head for a long time, but I've been able to get an advisory board of phenomenal women. I'm
biased, but I agree.
And Patty's one of them.
Board there, but I can say, and probably speak for the other folks who were on the board, that being able to be a part of this felt really exciting, and you were really doing something that felt meaningful. So I think that allowed the board to then share vulnerably and, feel empowered to think, well, how could we, craft something amazing, And so I think that you have cultivated that board in a way that then is allowing, the development of the Leadership Academy in a way that feels really organic and fitting the need that you're wanting to serve.
Thank you.
And I'll say the reason that we even got together was your book. Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics, which people should check out, is a great book that we had a book club about that then led to some really meaningful discussions. Yes, I have mine right up here on my bookshelf, and I'm not going to stand up right now, but so I think it's really great to hear some of what came before I was involved in that book club, of how you've defined this as a value for your practice, that you are going to have time allotted and defined to serve a population, and then being able to scale that in a way that is accessible, affordable. So talk more about how Towerscope Leadership Academy is meeting that value that you had of serving the population you want to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, thank you. We try to practice what we preach, right? So I'm trying to develop our advisory board as the, future leaders as well. So the purpose, the reason, what we're sort of focusing on is the fact that, number one, women are underserved when it comes to leadership development, because most of the leadership development that's available are at higher levels that are more expensive, and women have a harder time getting to those higher levels because of systemic, inequities. And number two, leadership development is quite expensive, like I mentioned. And number three, many of the things that they need in order to continue staying with the company is support, and so all of these things, plus the fact that leadership development training continues to be a one-size-fits-all model and does not take into consideration important discussions about leadership identity development, not leadership development, but leadership identity development that is required for people to imagine themselves in leadership positions when they don't see who they are in leadership, right? When they don't hear things that connect to who they are and what they could bring, right? So how do you develop leaders who can still be their authentic selves, who can shed the sort of unhelpful societal messages about women in leadership, or what it takes to be a leader, or those kinds of things. So we sort of infuse that in the work that we are offering, and it's going to be therefore meeting all of those needs. It's going to be affordable, it's going to be accessible, and it's going to include a women-centric curriculum that speaks to that leadership identity development. And that's really the focus. And we're looking right now to start a 9-week mini intensive for founding members who are willing and interested in not only investing in themselves, but for us to invest in them in developing their leadership so that they could have a greater impact wherever they go. And so applications are starting soon. September 15th through the 22nd is when we have applications. I really hope that we're going to get an amazing founding member cohort so that we can pour into them and they could pour into each other, and we can, really develop this thing.
Yeah. So that aspect of identity is embedded within this Towerscope Leadership Academy. Understanding that sometimes the messages we are getting from society about our identity, and then the messages we're getting about, well, what does it mean, to be a great leader, and what does it mean to have all these other parts of myself, that maybe I'm getting mixed messages. It's hard to pick all that apart. It's hard to then navigate those politics or organizational dynamics in a way where we are able to get the sort of opportunities, resources, alignment to being able to grow within your role or moving to other roles. I think, all of those aspects that can be a challenge, especially if maybe you are, working in an organization where you don't necessarily understand how do I advance here? I feel like maybe boxed in. Maybe I've hit a plateau. Maybe I've got all this ambition and I don't have anywhere to go with it.
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of unspoken, cultural norms that you don't have access to unless you have mentors who have been there, done that, and willing to reveal what those are and how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized in my own leadership journey is I was really fortunate to get an amazing mentor to help me basically catapult my leadership career, but that is not the
Mm-hmm.
norm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly not the norm, especially for women with additional marginalized identities,
Mm-hmm.
right? Women of color. And so this is a way for us to give more access to that information, that resource. That was the entire purpose of this book as well, is for me to like take every single thing that I learned about navigating workplace politics and pour that into a book to help other people and make it more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think that you have learned so far about trying to build this sort of affordable, accessible community that is women-centered? Like, through the process of developing this pilot that we are launching for founding members, what do you feel like you've learned about what it takes to get there?
Yeah.
Other people are thinking, well, I've thought about developing a program, but I don't know where to start, or, even who to ask for help or
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
How did you get to this place where you are at with developing a program?
Yeah, it's not easy. So what I learned is when I work internally to an organization, all of the resources are set up for me. I have the business person, I have the HR person, I have the network partners, I know who to go to for what. There's departments, there's everybody's in the ecosystem set up for supposedly my success, right? Like if I know how to use a
Hopefully.
system and if they're there
Yeah.
for, supporting the program, right? You don't have that as an entrepreneur. You have to develop all of those systems, that entire infrastructure, and most importantly, surround yourself with people who are just as excited about your vision and want to invest their time and effort and support, whether it's mentors, whether it's advisory board like you, surrounding yourself with those folks who can elevate you, who can push you to be even better, and being willing to fail over and over and over and over again and be okay with it because you're just learning, right? So like I have had other iterations, different pieces of what's gone into this community program. I've had like shorter group coaching cohorts. And from each one of those, I learned what worked, what didn't. And one thing that I have learned is if I don't have at least one additional person pushing me past my frustration with what's not working, I will let go of something that is actually worthwhile. So this is why I actually developed the advisory board, is like, I need you and the rest of these strong, passionate women to be like pushing me and continuing and like, here's another idea. Let's try this. Like, bringing in other voices, other ideas, other perspectives, because we will all get there, further faster, as Dr. Lubna Sumji has said herself. So that's a lot of what I've learned about being like outside of a system.
Yeah.
Create your system, create your ecosystem.
There you go. Okay. So I want to learn a little bit more about you as a person, so that we, and as an SCP community, get to know each other better. So off the top of your head, if I ask what brings you joy, what comes to mind?
We as a family, so I've got 2 kids, a husband, we as a family, especially my spouse and I, like to go explore new food places, and new places to hike and walk around. And we did that this past weekend. Even though we've lived here for like 16 years, there's always new places to discover and explore. So we like doing that.
And you're in Durham, is that right?
Around Durham, Chapel Hill area. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I just discovered This past weekend, there's a speedway where they used to have like NASCAR driving in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and now it's like a walking trail. And
Oh,
so
that's
super
different.
cool. We
Yeah.
went there. We went to like have different, places to eat and stuff like that. So we enjoy that. We enjoy watching a lot of the Marvel and Star Wars trilogies, and my daughter and I like to binge watch 90s shows. So and some 2000s. Like she has been binge watched with me probably 3 times The Office. We binge watched Gilmore Girls, and then we went to was it Desperate Housewives.
Yeah. So going back to those very popular shows of maybe 20 years ago, you're like, let's give it another go and see.
Yeah, and she's like a 9th grader. Like, I don't know why she's interested, but like she's
But
totally
it's like light TV that just
Yeah.
you can spend time together and have a couple laughs. And
Yes. So like real, exactly, down home, just like calm family stuff.
Spending time together.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Well,
That's
simple, but
awesome. I love hearing that having teenagers can be enjoyable and you have quality time and
totally. Honestly, I love the teenage years so much better than the early elementary school years.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
so much better.
I'm in the middle of it. So I love hearing from people who are finding joy.
We could do away with middle school.
Yeah. Yeah, they're rough patches. So finally, I want to close with talking about membership in SCP. I know what drew you in at that very first conference, but what keeps you around? What do you really value about your membership in the Society of Consulting Psychology?
It is honestly the conference. I have tried other, sort of things with SCP, but the conference really does make a difference for me. I like catching up with people. I like listening to, what folks are doing in consulting psychology across different spaces. And it's still, it's still a fairly relatively intimate compared to APA, which is completely overwhelming. You actually get to know people. And that's really, I think, most important. Clinical psychologists, we like real in-depth conversations.
Yeah, we like to connect to people, have high quality sort of interactions, and that space at the conference. It is not so large that you're alone in this sea of
and I would say, they're psychologists. What I also like is they're not all clinical psychologists. There's counseling psychologists, there's social psychologists, there are IO psychologists. So we have like a certain leaning, a flavor of psychology, I would say, that just like speaks to you in a very different way than if I'm in spaces with executive coaches who are not psychologists, it's kind of like a different flavor. If I'm in a space with people who do organizational development work, but they're MBAs, it's a different flavor. And so there's just something about like speaking from a psychological lens, in that like really in-depth, nuanced, complex people lens that just speaks to me, I guess.
Awesome. Well, I love hearing about your current work that you're working on, the journey that got you to where you're at right now. I think this will be really valuable for our other members who listen in. Thank you to the people who are listening. That's not our first live podcast episode. So thank you very much for the people who've commented, and please share the episode. And I appreciate you being here with me today.
It was great to talk with you, Patti, as always.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.